There we go. Fans of the Faceoff, welcome back. 1 week off, but we have returned. Jake Lapin here along with Julian McKenzie. Julian, how's it going?
Things are going all right, Jake. Things are going all right, man. It's great to see your face. I know we were off last week, but it's great to be back here on the YouTube airwaves. Talk a whole bunch of sports. We're going to catch up on all the good stuff.
Yeah, we missed a week there. We missed some good stuff, some stuff that we could have talked about, but as we were going through and deciding what to leave in and what to get rid of on today's agenda, we had to scrap a few things because they were a little outdated. But still plenty of juicy stuff to get into, and I think the best place to start, Julian, is Ezekiel Elliott. The NFL has spoken, 6-game suspension. Now he will appeal, and that hearing will be on August 29th, I believe. Goodell will not be a part of it, which I think is interesting. We can talk about in a second, but let's just start with the 6 games. What do you think of that number?
Part of me feels that this number, for some reason, is not enough. And it's interesting considering we know about their suspension history in the past. Obviously, we don't need to go explain the whole Ray Rice thing to everybody. But, 6 games for what maybe allegedly, a lot of people are starting to go back and forth between how this is apparently just alleged stuff and how the court of law is saying something different, and then the NFL is saying something completely different as well with their suspension. But the fact that this comes down to 6 games, there's still something about this that just bothers me and a lot. And I don't know. I don't know if this is one of those decisions that the NFL could ever just get right. It seems as if no matter what number they'll assign to a player, it seems as if the punishment will never fit the crime, alleged or not. It's a lot of nuances there that are a bit kind of difficult to explain. So just going with my gut feeling here, I don't feel 6 games is enough. I think Zeke, obviously, he's going to appeal it and he's going to try to fight this case. But there's something about these 6 games that just doesn't feel right to me. I'm not sure how you feel about it.
This is a tricky subject, and I tend to go back and forth on it multiple times a day. And when I first heard 6 games, my initial gut reaction was, wow, that's a lot. I mean, think about it. In the NFL, 6 games, that's over a quarter of the season. That's almost half of the season. That's a lot of games. Now, before anyone goes crazy or anything, I do not condone sexual abuse, domestic abuse of any kind. I think if he were truly guilty of that, he should be in jail, regardless of his stature as an athlete. Athletes are not above the law. I think they've gotten away with far too much as it is. That being said, Julian, why does the NFL suddenly think they know more than the legal system? I mean, he was found innocent, and I'm sure there's a lot of variables. There's politics, there's money involved in cases like these with someone who's a public figure. But that being said, I know the legal system's not perfect, but man, they got to be smarter than the NFL, don't you think?
They're supposed to be, but I also think the NFL, I don't think this is necessarily a case of the NFL knowing more than people who are supposed to know the judicial system. This is just them just trying to avoid another Ray Rice fiasco where they assign such a 2-game suspension for what Ray Rice did, and they thought, you know what? Let's just try to throw the book at Ezekiel Elliott here. They probably felt that 6 games was just enough. In my heart of hearts, I still kind of feel it isn't enough, but I'm not responsible for these decisions. Those are way above my pay grade. I think those 6 games, people may think it's harsh, people may think it's not. This is just the NFL just trying to say, hey, you know what? We gave a lenient suspension the last time. We got burned for it. We're going to try to give something a little bit more harsh, in their eyes anyway. Because obviously, there are people who feel like he should get more. So I'm not here going to tell people saying, you know what, 6 games fits the bill completely.
It's one of those things where the NFL, I mean, as horrible as this is, the NFL has had ample opportunities to lay down rulings in situations like these based on several criminal activities in the past, which is, again, unfortunate, but that's just the way it is. Now, we remember Ray Rice was given 2 games when it came out that he abused his wife, and then a video surfaced of him legitimately punching her, and all of a sudden they decide to double that to 4 games. I mean, Like, what did the video change? We know what he did. How does that affect what you're doing? So it just seems like it's all been so reactionary in the past. And then you could also argue how asinine it is that a guy like Josh Gordon, who decides to smoke weed in the offseason, he's given a full season or 12 games or whatever it was.
Well, he can't get back in the league. And just the other day, Roger Goodell said that reinstating Josh Gordon for, marijuana is like the furthest thing from his mind. He is so far gone from returning from the league.
And Gordon's a unique case, and the only reason I bring him up is to bring up the point that how is smoking weed, which is now legal in several states, what? 6 times worse? Sorry, I'm not good at math, but I think the Ray Rice original suspension was 2 games versus Gordon's was 12 games in the same season. So the NFL is saying that weed is 6 times worse than abusing your wife. So they've just messed this up time and time again. And when I heard 6 games, like I said, my initial reaction was, wow, that kind of seems like a lot. But I think the NFL is just trying to take a stand for once and for all and use Elliott as an example. Whether he truly is guilty or not, we may never know. But this isn't the only thing that he's been involved with. This isn't the only rumor of illegal activity linked to Elliott. And the NFL came out and said they weren't paying attention to those other things. This was purely based on this. But I don't believe that for a second. I think, look, this is a star, up-and-coming running back, and we've screwed this up time and time again. We have to take a stand now, and that's why they went for 6 full games, which is a huge chunk of the season for a pretty important player, a first-round pick in fantasy for sure, arguably even Offensive Player of the Year discussion behind that offensive line.
Still in my gut, I feel that 6 games might not be enough. But at the same time, we could agree to disagree on that particular point. But yes, the Dallas Cowboys are definitely going to miss Ezekiel Elliott if he ends up serving that entire suspension. Obviously, with the 1-2 tandem of him and Dak Prescott in the back, the offensive line is still there, and they'll still protect Dak Prescott, but a lot more pressure will fall on the sophomore quarterback to get the job done. In terms of the suspension, again, 6 games, I still feel they could have gone a bit more harsher, but not up to me. No, you go ahead. Make
compelling arguments for both ways, if that makes sense. Like, if he is if all the evidence that the NFL cited, if that is true, then he doesn't belong in society. If he broke the law, he belongs in jail.
Absolutely.
But if the legal system didn't find anything, didn't find it worthy, then why does the NFL think that they are superior to the law? I mean, that just defeats the purpose of all of this, in my opinion. I don't understand that.
It's weird.
And it's a case-by-case basis because, you could apply that logic to several different situations, like marijuana, for instance. But it doesn't sit well with me that the NFL is sitting on the mountaintop thinking that they have more power than the judicial system.
Well, when you're the NFL and you command all this revenue and you feel you can make all these decisions with an iron fist, I guess we can't be too surprised about their arrogance, can we?
No, not in the least bit surprising. Just not right. Seems unethical.
I don't know. To the next topic. In the last few days, obviously, with what has gone on in Charlottesville, in Virginia, not only have we seen people over on social media and in person speak out against U.S. President Donald Trump, we've seen athletes speak out against Donald Trump, namely LeBron James, referring to Donald Trump as a so-called president. And today, an article involving Sports Illustrated, Kevin Durant said he would not visit President Donald Trump at the White House if the Golden State Warriors were invited. To quote him, "Nah, I won't do that. I don't respect who's in office right now. I'm just going to handle this one from here." So, Donald Trump right now, I'm not going to waste too much breath on him, but I think the fact that he, the way he tried to defend anything that happened over the weekend and go on the whole tinge about saying, there was violence on both sides is extremely infuriating. And to see people respond to that, I've seen a wide variety of responses, including athletes here, mostly from everybody, varying on the side of, hey, you know what, we want love, we want peace with everybody, we want everyone to come together. But slowly and surely, we're starting to see people kind of speak up and say, no, this is wrong. We're speaking out against Donald Trump. We're voicing him by name. And what I want more of from people, I guess, just because I feel like I haven't seen it enough, I want more, obviously, of the fact that Donald Trump is out here supporting these white nationalists and these Nazis. I mean, that's what it looks like to everybody else. And it's extremely infuriating. And I mean, we're going to see it more from the NBA, which is the most progressive league of all the professional sports. More guys are going to take a stand and voice their opinions against Donald Trump. But I'm very curious to see in the fallout of guys like LeBron and Kevin Durant speaking out. Other leagues, that's what's going to interest me the most. Guys from the NFL. Obviously, we were seeing guys like Marshawn Lynch who won't say anything, but he said he sat down for the anthem, and he's been doing that even before Colin Kaepernick did, and Michael Bennett as well. What about guys from the NHL? Actually, there was an interesting thing on the subject of the NHL. Jeremy Roenick had retweeted this false tweet, a false post from James Harrison about protesting against what's going on and obviously speaking out against Trump. And Roenick lashed out back at that, saying, why is this going on? And seeing all these athletes kind of speak out now, I feel good about it, but I want to see more of it. I want to see more people speak out, and I think we're about to enter a really exciting time with athletes speaking out against social injustice and the wrongdoings that happen in the Oval Office on the part of President Donald Trump. And and not just through social media. Hopefully we can see them actually speak out, in public in front of a microphone. Have the raw audio to sound out. All this to say, it's going to be a very interesting next few months, depending on what other stupidness that Trump is going to do. Because, I mean, look, come on. I'm sorry, dude. It seems as if every day there's something new. Donald Trump is one of the few men, if not the only guy, who can make a nuclear threat be the second worst thing he's done all week. It's going to be a very interesting time these next few weeks. And right now we're getting Kevin Durant and LeBron James say the things they say about President Trump. And I feel like it's just going to get worse, and it's just going to be a really exciting time to see these athletes and see them strike out and say something towards Donald Trump.
I mean, Montreal is looking better and better each day, I got to say.
Whoa. Time out. I know, and I got to say this. Just because everybody keeps, we look at the United States and we see all the foolishness that happens every day, and everyone looks at Canada and they look at all these other countries and they say, man, these countries are looking real good right now. Don't know if you saw the Vice documentary on the Charlottesville protests.
I did. There were Canadians involved, yeah.
There were Quebecers. And slowly but surely in some of these areas in Canada where racism has been there but just kind of silent, we're starting to see them come out the woodworks as well. And we're starting to see some of these right-wing guys just peer up out of nowhere up in Quebec and all over Canada as well. And obviously it's a bit more out there in the States. Way more states, way more instances of this. But just as a heads up to everybody who's trying to, make their way up to Canada and think, hey, you know what, everything's going to be great. We have our own issues too. We totally have our own issues as well. And I just want people watching, especially from the stateside, because I think the Canadians who are watching this can understand what I'm saying here. But I think people stateside should get an understanding that, hey, you know what, it's not all peaches and cream over up on the Canadian side.
Yeah, look, obviously a lot of shit going on that's not good. I don't want to harp on it too much because we could get seriously sidetracked here. But in terms of the athletes speaking out, look, if white supremacist Nazis can speak out and say anything they want and be protected by freedom of speech, that First Amendment, then why can't LeBron say what he wants to say? Or why can't Durant say that he doesn't support Donald Trump? It's the freedom of speech. There you go. Now, I think it's a valid point you could bring up that we're talking about LeBron James and Kevin Durant. And, of course, LeBron, rumors swirling about him possibly leaving Cleveland after this year. Dan Gilbert, a Trump supporter. Now, LeBron can say whatever he wants, but what if Kay Felder were the one speaking up? You see what I mean? Like LeBron James is LeBron James. Nothing's going to happen. If Tom Brady's kneeling during the national anthem with Robert Kraft, a huge Trump supporter, nothing's going to happen. You see what I'm saying? So I think that's an interesting thing to keep in mind when athletes speak out, that these are the athletes who could say anything and aren't going anywhere because of their talent. That being said, they also are far more influential. So them speaking out has far greater impact, and I'm absolutely in favor of it. I'd be asinine to oppose them.
That is a fair point that you do bring up. I mean, we're as we speak right now, we find a way to bring him up almost every third episode. Colin Kaepernick, who, we've seen fine. His numbers have kind of gone down the last few years, but by all means, this is a guy who should be on an NFL roster. And because of the fact he spoke out against injustices in this country, in the United States, he does not have a job. And funny enough, I mean, the last few days I saw Des Bryant kind of speak about athletes, trying to speak out and saying, hey, and he tried to respond to a fan saying, hey, you know what? I have a family. I can't go out and say some of these things. And that is the other side of speaking out. And that's what makes something like what Colin Kaepernick does or Michael Bennett and to a certain extent, Kevin Durant, LeBron James, that's what makes it so brave. Because at the end of the day, there are still going to be people who will say, you know what, this guy believes this thing, I'm going to just step off and not be a fan of this person. And they put their whole careers and to a certain extent, their lives on the line. And you are right. I think more influential guys like a KD, like a LeBron, or in this case, like we'll use him for this sake, a Tom Brady, even though some people listen to this would say, hey, he kind of goes with the MAGA side, if you get what I mean, with the hat. But those bigger influential guys, they have more clout and they could probably get away with saying something like that with little to no repercussions, as opposed to the middling dude who's fighting for a spot and it's so much easier to cut him. That is a fair point.
We saw during the election, actually, I think it was Spencer Hawes, who was an avid Trump supporter, and he actually got a lot of backlash for that from around the league. And look, we're talking about Spencer Hawes here, an NBA journeyman, to say the least, top 10 pick, but by the Sacramento Kings, which basically eliminates that feat. And forget who's wrong or right here. How you feel is, your political opinion is your own. But again, that's just an example of a guy getting backlash who is not by any means an NBA superstar.
And in this case, this is one of the more rare instances where you see in a progressive league like the NBA, someone who's going against the grain and going for something a bit more conservative and perhaps a bit more inflammatory. But especially in these last few days where we've seen the horrible happenings of Charlottesville, it's so much harder to sit idly by and not say anything or not, speak out about something, right? We're almost at this point now, with regards to the whole Nazi thing and how that's going. We're at a point now where almost not saying anything is almost like siding with the bad guys. People saying there's two sides to every argument. In this situation, Jake, I know damn well there's a good side and a bad side.
Yeah, we don't need to make it more complex than it is. One side is wearing swastikas, which is, I mean, that's literally the symbol of the epitome of evil in human history. There's really no equating one side or the other. It's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, we could spend hours on this topic
Absolutely.
and never get to the bottom of it. It's awful what's going on in our country right now. It's eye-opening. If you haven't watched that Vice video from Charlottesville that day, I strongly recommend it. Very eye-opening. But I think we just need to move on for the sake of getting on with the face-off, getting on with sports. And
Absolutely.
if this things continue, we can definitely circle back to this at another time. But I guess sticking with NBA stars, Julian, this isn't the best segue I've ever had, but guys like LeBron and Durant came up in the news yesterday when Vegas released their NBA MVP odds. And I'll give you the top 5 in the order as follows. Russell Westbrook, the reigning MVP, is the favorite heading into the NBA season. He has 7-2 odds. Kevin Durant comes in second at 9-2. Kawhi Leonard of the San Antonio Spurs, who was a finalist this past year, at 13-2. LeBron James, not a finalist this past year, but a perennial candidate, I think is grossly understating him and his role in the NBA. But nonetheless, he's a 15-2 in fourth. And then finally in fifth, this year's runner-up, James Harden at 8-1. What are your immediate thoughts on this list?
Russell Westbrook will not win MVP this year. For some reason, when I looked at these odds, that is the first thing that struck me. And I think because of the fact that Paul George is there and, you know, Russell Westbrook did all he had to do to get that one MVP. I don't think we're going to see a guy, you know, go out and chase every single triple-double. That season will live on forever because of the fact that he's going to have another guy to defer to. Westbrook's MVP chances aren't going to be nearly as great. That being said, on the part of Kevin Durant, just trailing right behind him at 9-2, I could see a really good MVP season from him. Guy getting better and better, and not only, and this was a guy who did not have to, you know, dial it back to play with the superstars of Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and all those guys on Golden State. Kevin Durant balled out and ended up earning his ring, his first ever ring. This is a guy who could have an MVP season. I think he should be the front runner and not Russell Westbrook, just in my personal opinion.
Yeah, look, the argument last year was too much help, right? And Russ recruited, right? I shouldn't say recruited, but the Thunder brought in Paul George, a arguably top 10 player, easily a top 20 player in the NBA. It'd be hard for me to imagine Westbrook maintaining the same stats he did last season when it was basically a one-man show. That being said, Julian, Paul George is mysteriously very high up on this list. I know I didn't mention he's on the top 5, but I believe he is in the top 10, which struck me very curious because how in the hell is Paul George going to win an MVP over Russell Westbrook? If that happens, I think that's the last thing the Thunder want to happen because I think Russell Westbrook is hitting the road if that were to happen. There's no way that I think not like any of them, if either of them is going to win it, it's got to be Westbrook, right? Don't you think?
That would make more sense to me. And if Paul George ends up being that guy who's a better MVP candidate than Russell Westbrook, there are two things that have happened here. And I think the more likely of the two is that Russell Westbrook got hurt, and Paul George had to have a Russell Westbrook-like season to give the Thunder a chance. Or Russell Westbrook was sick the whole year and said, hey, you know what? I don't mind letting Paul George be the guy in Oklahoma City. That doesn't make any sense to me. That being said, I mean, Paul George, an opportunity to ball out with Russell Westbrook, there is a potential for those two to be dynamite together. I can understand why his MVP chances are great, but him getting a chance, a top 10 finish in the MVP race could be likely, but I don't see him winning an MVP over Russell Westbrook at all. That's kind of weird.
Yeah, I thought it was very peculiar that he was that high. I mean, with Russ on his team. I guess if Russ were to get injured, but I mean that's just like picking at. I mean, who knows?
Question: where did Giannis Antetokounmpo rank?
I think he might have actually been sixth. I can't seem to find the list in front of me, but he was high up there for sure.
Well, it's okay because in 2 years, Giannis Antetokounmpo will be MVP. So you're on notice.
You might be jumping the gun just a tad on that one. We'll have to see, but that's not what we're picking today. I found it interesting. I like Kawhi Leonard, and just on the topic of too much help. I mean, he's the one guy who really didn't have a superstar join him. His team didn't get significantly better in the offseason. Arguably, they might have even gotten a tad bit worse, and depending on how much you like Rudy Gay. You gotta like Kawhi's chances. A finalist this past year really emerged on the scene, and if he can get his playmaking skills a little bit better, just like, I mean, I'm not talking triple-double numbers, but get those assists up just a bit, the scoring was there, and we all know the defense was there, perennial defensive player of the year candidate. I like Kawhi. I think that's who I would put my money on. Also, I think it's important to watch where Kyrie goes because, look, LeBron hasn't won the MVP in a while, but it's not because he hasn't been the best player in the league in a while. We all know that's bullshit. LeBron James is the best basketball player alive on the planet, and I get it. The league doesn't like repetition. Greg Popovich doesn't win Coach of the Year every single year because no one wants to see that, or the awards would lose all their meaning. Daryl Morey has argued that they already have, but we'll ignore that for the time being. If Kyrie were to leave, though, if you just think about this, I mean, with the Warriors emerging now and handling their business against Cavaliers in the finals, for the first time really in a long time, LeBron is not on a favorite or top two favorite to win it all. And that's a new role for him. And with keeping that in mind, if he takes the Cavs, sans Kyrie, if they bring in a young haul like they say they might because they're worried about their future if he potentially takes off next year. So if they trade away Kyrie for young assets and he carries them to the top 1 or 2 seed, LeBron could get this award back, one that he definitely deserves. I mean, we're talking about LeBron James here. And if he's finally in some sort of underdog role for the first time in who can remember since 2007, I think he's right back in the discussion.
LeBron James, this whole offseason, pretty much like 1 or 2 days after the finals, we've seen him in this, this kind. Remember when he had the whole bald thing going? LeBron James, as far as I'm concerned, I know this going with my gut hasn't worked with me on this show before, but I feel like we're getting a really mean, vengeful LeBron this year. I don't know if it's going to be good enough to win MVP this year, but you lose the NBA Finals. Kyrie Irving wants out, and there is a potential of him getting all these assets in return. It's square going to be all on LeBron James this year. And thankfully for him, the only other team in the Eastern Conference that has a chance of really matching up to him is the Boston Celtics. He's not going to have too much competition in the East. This is a golden opportunity for him to be an MVP candidate this year, and he could be a top 3 guy. I know he ended up losing out this past year, and you have obviously Russell and Harden and Kawhi in the top 3. But LeBron, I mean, if he balls out this year and shows everybody, hey, you know what? I had to put the team on my back literally in this underdog role. I could see him at least. This could be enough to make him win. But I'm still going to go with Kevin Durant. I still think Kevin Durant on that team will find a way to be that MVP. I think he'll be statistically better than almost anybody this year. I don't know. For some reason, I think Kevin Durant is that guy. That's going to be my pick for the preseason. Well, before preseason at this point. We're still in the offseason. But I would not rule out an amazing LeBron James performance in what could be his final year as a Cleveland Cavalier.
I find it hard to see a Warrior taking home this award. I feel like the voters will just – I think any Warrior who's even deserving of the award will lose votes just because, hey, Kevin Durant has Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green, or Steph has Durant and vice versa, and so on and so forth.
Even if Kevin Durant leads in points,
in the votes.
Even if Kevin Durant leads in a number of statistical categories,
it's the too much help category, man. If Eric Gordon and Ryan Anderson and Trevor Ariza are too much, then damn it, Klay Thompson and Steph Curry are too much.
Okay, I see where you're getting at here.
Far too high on this list is James Harden. 8-1 odds, 5th best player. That's
too high?
Too high. Julian, he's been the most valuable player in the NBA twice and has 0 awards for it. Mm-hmm. And now he has Chris Paul. How the hell is he going to win the award? He's never going to win the award. It should be 800-1. They're not going to vote for him, regardless of whether he deserves it or not. No one should bet on that. That's a horrible bet. I'm telling you right now. I'll put a lot of money on Harden not taking home the hardware this year.
So you'd rather pick Paul George is what you're saying?
I didn't say that.
Fine. Okay. Fine. So fine. Kevin Durant will be my pick. LeBron has a good chance. James Harden, do not bet on James Harden.
If you've been the most valuable player twice and have yet to win an MVP award, I'm staying away from that bet. That's just simple logic right there. I'm not going near Harden in this award if I were to bet, which is probably not going to happen.
That's fair. So we got to segue over from the hard court to the diamond in some MLB headlines. I know that's one thing that gets Jake Lapin of the MLB Network going. We got to look at the headlines in the AL wild card. The New York Yankees, as we record, the top leader in the wild card race. They have the first spot, 3 games up on the Angels, and a half a game behind them, the Kansas City Royals. A game and a half behind the Twins. The Seattle Mariners are also in that spot, as are the Texas Rangers, Tampa Rays, the Toronto Blue Jays, who I said were not going to touch 500 for the rest of the year. They won today over Tampa. They're 3 games back. The Baltimore Orioles still have a chance.
I thought you were about to take credit for saying the Blue Jays were not done, and I was about to give you hell. Because
No.
I'm the one who said at the deadline that you stand pat. Even better, they got rid of shitty Liriano, who is screwing the Astros, who can't even retire a left-handed hitter. There's a trending hashtag in Houston that is things I trust more than Liriano, and it's appalling some of the things on that list. As in Corey Brewer sinking a corner 3, or Angel Hernandez getting a strike call right. It is absurd how awful Liriano has been in his short stint so far here in Houston. Even worse because it's magnified by their horrendous deadline, because that was their only move. Thank God they at least brought in Tyler Clippard, who's looked okay so far. But sorry for getting sidetracked. There are 8 teams within 3 games of the second wild card. The MLB must be licking its chops adding that second wild card team. Is genius, because if there were only one wild card team, no one would even be paying attention. The playoff teams would be almost as good as set. Yet here we are with 8 teams still in the mix, and I just want to start by saying credit to the Angels, man.
It's
down for, 6 weeks, I believe, with a broken thumb, and they were as good as done. Everyone was writing them off, and you think about that roster. They got a decent lineup, but without Trout, that's a gaping hole. I mean, we're talking about the best player in the sport. And then you look at that rotation. I mean, there's not a lot of talent there, plus some injuries they've been facing, and then the bullpen. Julian, can you name anyone in the Angels bullpen?
I can't. I do not lie. I can't not name anyone in that bullpen.
I can name a few, but simply because I cut videos of them as my job, and that's the only reason why they are in the Astros division. And I still wouldn't even be able to do it. I mean, they got Bud Norris, Cam Bedrosian, and he's been hurt for a while too. It's It's shallow. It is shallow. And give Mike Scioscia a ton of credit for putting them in this shape. They've won, I think, 13 out of their last 17, having a red-hot August. I'm not sure if they can hold off some of those other teams. Let's start with this, Julian. Who do you think is the favorite of all 8 of those teams to get that second spot?
It's so hard. It's because it seems as if 1 week we're sold on this one team, and then a week later they're out of it or they're back in. I remember 1 week we're thinking, hey, you know what? I think the Minnesota Twins are too far back. Well, now they're a game and a half out of that wild card spot, and they're at 500 right now. Also, something else I will bring up, with all these teams that are, still have a chance at it, look at these percentages here, 512, 508, 2 teams at 500. And 4 of these teams who still have a chance are below 500. Yeah. I mean, yes, we are seeing some quality baseball down the stretch. We could be in for a really good race, but we're going to see a mediocre team take over that second wild card spot. And I mean, between the Angels and the Royals and the Twins and the Mariners and the Rangers and the Rays, and you know what? Fine. I'll put the Toronto Blue Jays in this. They still have an outside chance at making the wild card. But none of these teams stick out as a clear favorite. I think all these teams are more or less almost at the same level, and it's going to take, I mean, not to be cliche, it's going to take a decent run for them to say, you know what, they can run away with it. But there's no team in this pack that sticks out as an absolute favorite. They have that second wild card in tow. No, absolutely not. These teams scream mediocre, and I still don't think the Toronto Blue Jays are going to hang on and find a way to reach 500. Obviously, you can clown me by next week if that does happen, and hey, they've been winning games as of late and all that, but I don't know. I thought the Toronto Blue Jays dug themselves too much of a hole. But hey, you know what? They're still in it.
I disagree with you. When you look at those teams, the 3 teams that are in it that are below 500, I guess there's 4. But 3 of those teams were in the playoffs last year. And look, they're not having great years, but if one of those teams were to squeak in, and I'm talking Texas, Baltimore, or Toronto, I'm not like, yes, we get to face one of those teams for any of those teams. I mean, Toronto was in the ALCS last year. Texas had the best record in the American League last year. These guys are not having good years, and for whatever reasons, dealing with injuries and slumps, and there's lots of different reasons for why these teams are struggling. But they've been there. They have rosters with experience. And the team that frightens me, Julian, the Astros, I know, holding on by a thread to that number 1 overall seed in the American League. But if they were to hold on, the one team I do not want to see under any circumstances is the Texas Rangers. And I know Rangers fans will look at me like you're crazy. They've been playing not up to their standards this season, below 500, like we just said. Like, we're talking about a team that won 95 games last year, but they have the Astros number. They're playing some good ball. I know they shipped off Darvish, and that's a huge help if they were to play in a division series. But they own the Astros. They own that rivalry. Maybe not so much this year, but if you take a look at the past few years, without a doubt, Texas has put their stamp on Houston's minds. And if they can sneak in, they're only 2 teams out. They don't have the pitching to do it. They really don't. But they have a former manager of the year. They have a great lineup that was best record in the American League last year. That's the team that scares me.
Difference between last year and this year, I mean, there's changes on both sides. But, I mean, no, you can't convince me on this one. I think it's just way too – I mean, I hate to cop out here, but it's way too close to call, and there's none of these teams here that strike me out as a team that says, you know what, if they're in the wild card, you really need to be scared of these guys. I mean, I think the fact that yes, he wasn't having the greatest year in Texas, but I think the fact that he's gone on to do great things in LA, you need that change of scenery. And I think the Rangers, they don't have that dominant number 1 guy in their rotation. I think the Blue Jays, they're still lacking some consistency in my eyes, and and Minnesota and Seattle have those same problems as well, it's way too close to call, and we're going to end up seeing a middling team, just a shade over 500 in this spot, and they're probably going to get cooked once they reach the postseason.
Since the wild card added a second team, the winner of that game has won exactly 50% of the time against the number one seed since 2012 or whatever it was. 50% of the time. It's about getting hot at the right time. I think there's a few of these teams that are certainly capable of doing that. The three I said were all in the playoffs last year. Kansas City, we know they've had some magical postseason runs. They're a half game out right now. I wouldn't write off all of these teams automatically. And also, I think it's bullshit. You got to pick a team, man.
If I have to pick a single team,
you got to pick the second wild card right now. No excuses. I want to hear it.
The second team, you know what? Only because I want to remain consistent with picks that I made at the beginning of the year, and I know they've been kind of the last few games. I'll be consistent. I'll pick Seattle.
Oh, man. If there were one team that I had no faith in, it would be the Seattle.
Only for the sake of being consistent. It's way too early to call this, man.
We're
still in August.
We're still in August. Except for maybe Minnesota.
We're still in August.
Paxton's on the DL. Felix is on the DL.
We are still in August.
Is having his worst season since his rookie year. That is the last team I would pick. You're just trying to save face, and it's going to end pretty bad.
I'm just remaining consistent with my picks, and I will die with these picks. It's fine. It's totally fine. But it's way too soon to pick a team out of this batch here. I think all these teams are just still middling the pack, and it's totally possible that one team that looks as if it's going to be a half a game back of that spot, they end up losing their 3.5 back. It's still way too close to call in that aspect. There's no favorite here. And really, I still think you're surprised. I get it, the fact that there's 50% odds in a wild card game. You know, obviously they're playing up against a number one seed. It's just not. I don't know. If I'm the Astros, if I'm Cleveland, if I'm Boston, if I'm the Yankees, who are in that other wild card spot, I'm not afraid of any of these teams.
You also have to start thinking. I mean, look, you got to get in, obviously, but once it's that one game do or die scenario, which we've argued about, I don't like it. You like it. That's fine.
I love it.
We're not getting into that right now. What I'm saying is, you got one game, in or out. And you got to start thinking at that point, it's all about pitching. I think New York would probably go with Sonny Gray, possibly Luis Severino. He was bad his last start. I think he was pitching tonight. I haven't seen how he's done. But I'd argue they'd probably go with Gray in that situation. And then you look at this list of teams, right? Who are their aces? Kansas City has Vargas, who had an unbelievable first half, but not so good second half. Seattle, will Felix be healthy? Even so. Hasn't lived up to his standards this year or in a few years, for that matter.
Absolutely, you're right.
Could we see some big sexy? Probably not. Texas has Cole Hamels. Gotta like him in a do-or-die scenario, and so on and so forth. And I know that doesn't matter for getting in, but once you get to that game, the Yankees have to start thinking, okay, which team would I prefer to see? And with that in mind, Julian, if you're the Yankees, which of these teams would you most want to play?
If you're the New York Yankees right now, like I said, you're not afraid of any of these teams here. That being said, no, they've had Minnesota's number quite a bit. I don't think they'd mind playing against them. Maybe the pitching in Kansas City may be a bit intimidating for them. Yes, fine. The pitching in Seattle has been, kind of subpar, but they can hit as well. The Toronto Blue Jays, they send Marcus Stroman. That's it. I think they can go up. Well, that might actually be a bit tough considering if they do get hot and maybe Josh Donaldson ends up hitting them. I'm not sure. I don't know. The Rays, nothing about the Rays that scares me. The Orioles, obviously, the Rays and the Orioles.
Incredible pitching, though, in that one-game scenario. They got Chris Archer on the mound, and they have a steady bullpen. Tampa has, the best starting rotation ERA in the American League.
I think the Yankees beat them, especially if they have Sonny Gray up there. One point I did want to bring up because this guy has been on the chopping block for the last few days, and there's still time to make a move on him. What if one of these wildcard teams, this could actually change my mind, what if one of these wildcard teams makes a swing at Justin Verlander? I mean, the Tigers are way out of it, obviously. They're looking to sell. And Justin Verlander, one of those guys, was on the market. I mean, a few days ago, I tweeted you about the fact that the Astros were knocking the door on him. And, hey, I did suggest that. I did suggest Justin Verlander and the Houston Astros, they should talk. But, hey, who's to say Seattle doesn't take a flyer on him? Who's to say Minnesota? Well, maybe not Minnesota. Who knows? But what if one of these wildcard teams take Justin Verlander? I think if I'm one of those guys and you need some pitching, hey, Seattle, you mentioned all those guys on the DL, that's a team that could take Justin Verlander and say, hey, you know what? We have a big game pitcher. If we find ourselves in a position where we win enough games, we put ourselves in a wild card spot, boom. That is our starter right there. He's a big game pitcher.
No. It's a nice idea, but, I mean, all the reports are saying Verlander trade is a long shot, and that's mostly because he has a no-trade clause. He's not accepting a trade to Seattle or Minnesota or Tampa Bay. He just wouldn't do it. I think the only team he would go to at this point is a division leader. Maybe the Yankees, but I mean the Yankees aren't even.
They're stacked. They're good.
He wouldn't say yes to any of those teams, so that eliminates the idea. My pick, if I'm the Yankees, I think without question would be Minnesota. They have the least playoff experience of all these teams. You know, look, Kansas City was in the World Series a couple years ago. The Rays have some guys who have been in the postseason, Evan Longoria most specifically. Toronto, like I said, was in the playoffs last year. Baltimore was in the playoffs last year. Texas is in the playoffs last year, past couple of years. Minnesota is the team that I would want to play. Hell, the Angels, I know, look, their bullpen is awful, like we just said, but they have the one guy in the league who can affect the game more than anybody, and that's Mike Trout. And not to mention, people just forget about Albert Pujols because he's nowhere near the machine that he was, but he could turn in another 100 RBI season. He goes under the radar, and I know he can't run at all. The guy still gets RBIs. He's grossly overlooked and is obviously a no doubt Hall of Famer. That's not even one of them.
We'll see how these teams stack up next week. Because like I said, we do this on a week-to-week basis, and we see teams that look as if they're out of it and they climb back in and vice versa. If we're going to keep on with the MLB here and talk about one player in particular who is also technically available out for players, but I'm not sure if this guy could get dealt. But everyone's focusing on this home run chase that he's on, and we're talking about Giancarlo Stanton. This is a guy who is looking to fight for a record that he says is the true home run record, the 61 home run record held by Roger Maris. Jake, can he get to 60?
I think he might fall just a little short. He was riding a real nice hot streak, had 6 home runs in 6 consecutive games. That streak came to an end yesterday. There's 40 some odd games remaining. I think 42 for the Marlins, and he would need 16 home runs. It's certainly doable. I think he might end up falling a little bit short. I think teams playing the Marlins, if he's truly on this tear, teams who are still in contention for either a wild card spot or the division will just stop throwing him. If he gets to the point where he's even close at 56, 57, 58. But teams with nothing to lose. I mean, if they're playing anyone in that division besides the Nats, we're talking Mets, Phillies, Braves, etc. They have no reason to pitch around him. So it's possible. It's possible. I think he ultimately falls 4 or 5 short, but certainly something to keep an eye on, because if there's anyone in the league who can do it at this point in time, it's him.
Can't believe Giancarlo Stanton is giving people a reason to watch the Miami Marlins. But, hey, you know what? I hope he gets it. I'm with you on the fact that you'll probably fall short by a few home runs, but I love to see this guy ball. I love to see this guy come up to the plate and just smash these ones. The only other guy I could think of who I enjoy way more at the plate this season in particular is Aaron Judge. But Giancarlo Stanton smacks them. And I would love nothing more than for him to turn this season into a milestone year where he ends up getting 60-plus home runs. But I'm with you on the fact that he'll fall a couple short. That being said, with him killing it this year, And maybe if he makes it interesting for this chase, should he be considered for MVP? And I'll even throw out another name here, a guy who's been getting on base twice in 20 straight games, which is at a record pace, Joey Votto, Canadian. Should guys like Joey Votto and Giancarlo Stanton, who are establishing these records or chasing these records in the second half of the year, should they get consideration for, in this case, NL MVP?
Look, I think last year Mike Trout took home MVP when the Angels were terrible. They were not even in the discussion for the vast majority of the season. But we're talking about Mike Trout. I mean, the numbers were there. That being said, I don't think that will become the rule. I still think that was very much the exception. The Marlins are not in the discussion. The Reds are certainly not in the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't buy into the fact that the most valuable guy can be on a team that is irrelevant. I mean, look, they could be the best offensive player, and I would absolutely buy merit in that being a separate award. But the most valuable guy, if you're truly that valuable, your team can't be completely meaningless to the overall playoff picture, in my opinion.
I think that's a valid argument to say. That being said, I think if a guy like Giancarlo Stanton having the year that he's having, if he gets to a point where he establishes a record like that, it's so hard to ignore him in the conversation for MVP. If you have a guy like Joey Votto who gets on base as nearly as much as he does, fine, that record's not nearly as glamorous as 60 home runs. That's a guy who totally gets a look. If not necessarily a top 3 placement, you should at least get some votes. You should get some consideration. But I don't know. I don't necessarily have a problem with the guy who isn't necessarily on the greatest team, but he shows his value. And a guy like Giancarlo Stanton, if he somehow makes a real game of it and he ends up getting, to that record, I don't know if he should outright deserve MVP, but I think he definitely deserves to be in the conversation. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. And just like you mentioned, Mike Trout as one of the best players in the game, the numbers will be there for him. Giancarlo Stanton, I think, also ranks as fine. You know what? Maybe he's a guy who may strike out more, but this is a guy who I think ranks up there with one of the better guys in the game.
I think it's fine if they're finalists. I'll let them be in the discussion. I think like the fact that we're having a discussion, it's a valid question. If I had a vote, they would not get the top vote from me simply because their team had no impact on the actual overall season. I mean, if their wins above replacement, I mean, if they're adding 5 wins to their team, but that's the difference between 65 and 70, I'm just not. I'm not buying it.
Fair. It's fair. I don't know. Hey, you know what? Definitely, like I said, we have reason to watch the Miami Marlins for some reason. If Giancarlo Stanton actually does this, be a good at.
Who is your NL MVP right now?
Oh God,
bunch of good names.
There's a bunch of good names. I don't. That's 2 on the spot. I don't have a pick right now. I should have a pick, but I don't have a pick. I mean, I feel like a cop out, but like that's 2 on the spot. Like,
yeah. Bryce Harper's injury certainly doesn't help his case.
Yeah, he's hurt. Yeah.
I like a guy who I said when we did our mid-season awards, I said he's not there yet, but if he keeps going, he could get there. And that was Nolan Arenado. And I'm starting to making me look real smart. Today with an injury, but they were down 10-2. But the Rockies are solidified in that wild card spot. They're going to return to the postseason, and he's leading the charge. He should get to well over 100 RBIs, and he's the best defensive third baseman in the game, arguably ever. Certainly in our lifetime. I think Arenado could sneak in and grab this award away from a Dodger, considering Bellinger, who's great, has cooled off a little bit in the second half here, and no one else jumps off the page on that team. Justin Turner maybe has that high batting average, but I like Nolan Arenado.
I'll side with you with Nolan Arenado's play at third base. Before this year, I kept saying, hey, nothing's more enjoyable than seeing Manny Machado, the Baltimore Orioles, make plays at third base. Nolan Arenado has made so many plays at third this year. I'm starting to enjoy him a little more than
So fun to
Manny
watch.
Machado.
Fun to watch. Part of this new movement, Make Baseball Fun Again. Nolan Arenado is leading that charge. I mentioned the Dodgers. We're going to get to them in a second. And a new game we're going to play here, Julian. Look, it's the dog days of summer, and some exciting things are on the horizon. We got college football right around the corner. We got the NFL season coming up. We're going to preview all of that right here on the Faceoff, so make sure you stay tuned for future episodes. But for right now, we're in that time where the pennant races are really all we have to talk about, and there's really none that are that exciting or intriguing right now. So we're going to play a few games. We've played Big Deal or No Deal quite often, but we're going to throw in some new ones, mix it up a little bit. And this first one, we didn't invent this by any means. It's a simple over or under. And we're going to start with the Dodgers since they're on topic. Over or under, Julian, the Dodgers getting 109.5 wins. So basically, are they going to get to 110 wins? Look, they just ripped off the best 50-game span since the 1912 Giants. That's over 100 years. These numbers are a little bit old, but as of a week ago, 538 gave them a 73% chance to get to 110, a 14% chance to get to 117, which would be the all-time record, breaking the 2001 Mariners record of 116. Right now, they're one game back of that Mariners pace. Julian, you have them over or under 109.5 wins for the Dodgers?
Part of me really wants to take the over because they've been playing at this blistering pace, and there doesn't seem to be any team that could, stop these guys right now. But maybe they just miss it just short. Maybe I want to take the under and just get them at 109. This isn't a team that's going to fall off the cliff as I horribly predicted halfway through the year. But I could see them just missing. I mean, obviously they're on the pace that they are. No one's stopping them. But I could see them at least having a little lull and they just miss it. But not by much. If anything, I'll take the under. And if anything, they end up at 108 or 109. So they'll just miss it.
Sooner or later, they're going to start clinching everything. I mean, the division's locked up, but not mathematically, but essentially. And as well as the top record. I think, actually, that the Rockies have the second best record. No, the Nationals do. But, again, they're not making a serious push for a team that's been historically good. They should lock everything up sooner or later. And at that point, you think maybe they'd start resting a few guys. Obviously, they're not going to rush Kershaw back, but Kershaw's been gone, and they haven't skipped a beat. I mean, Adrian Gonzalez, that's a guy who would deserve rest. Oh, wait, he's been out almost the entire year. He's due back this weekend, I believe. But they're getting it from young guys. Bellinger's a rookie. Seager, sophomore. These are young guys who don't really need the rest. I'm sure they'll get a few days off here and then, but I think they're definitely going to get to 110. The 117 is the number that is a more realistic question to be concerned about. I think they get to 110. I really do.
So we have the Dodgers. Whatever they're going to do, they're going to set off. They're going to have an amazing year. And I don't know how many teams are actually going to match up against these guys in the postseason. But yeah, no, fine. 109, 110. Are they going to reach 117? I'm not exactly sure. I don't think they will. I think they'll just fall a bit short. I still want the under on that one. So we have the Dodgers there. And then let's keep it in baseball. The AL East. Over under 2.5 playoff teams. I don't know how you have half unless you have one of those AL East teams in as a wild card and then they lose the one game and they're out. But over under 2.5 playoff teams from the American League East.
A couple weeks ago, I think I would have taken the over, but now I think the obvious answer here is the under. Look, Tampa Bay was playing some really good ball, but they've hit an awful stride where they can't score any runs. They had 12 straight games scoring 3 or less or something. They had one of the worst offensive stretches in the live ball wild card era or whatever it was. It was something abysmal. They're not scoring runs, bottom line. And their pitching can only do so much. They've kind of fallen. They're 3 under 500, right now. They've kind of fallen off a cliff a little bit. And the Orioles were on a tear as well, but I think they started from too far behind. They're still certainly in the mix, but right now I like LA or Kansas City far more than any of those teams. So I'm going to say no under, sticking with the 2, Boston and New York.
I have to agree with you as well. All three of the other AL East teams, the Rays, the Jays, the Orioles, all three games back, all at 488. The Jays, they've been good as of late, 7 of their last 10, but I still don't see them making the playoffs. They may touch 500, but I don't see them being that team to stick out and be that second wild card team. And that same goes for the Rays and the Orioles as well. Give me the 2 AL East teams. Give me the under on those guys.
Let's get into some NBA here. This is a little ways down the road, but think about this. LeBron James over under 2.5 games in the Staples Center in 2018. Now, this could mean a few things. This could mean because if he's in the East, if he stays with the Cavs, he would get a road game against the Lakers and a road game against the Clippers. So that's 2 guaranteed.
Yeah.
However, if he leaves the Cavaliers, anywhere in the West, he would play there more than twice. If he plays for the Lakers, he obviously play there 40-plus times. But there's also, you could be thinking that the Cavs play Lonzo Ball and the Lakers in the 2018 finals. That's also a possibility, so just keep that in mind. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying that is a possibility in this over-under, very hypothetical scenario. 2.5 games in the Staples Center. What do you think, Julian, over or under?
Very quick questions here because of how this is kind of written out for both of us here. LeBron James in Staples Center 2018.
Correct.
You are counting for 2017, 2018, or are you just counting for 2018, the year as a whole?
Sorry, the 2017-18 season. That's
a very important distinction because if you're saying the 2018 year as a whole, I have to take the over because while I did think that him going to LA was saying. I know that's not what you're saying. I know that's not what you're saying. But that's the importance of keeping these things in writing because if this was 2018 as a whole, I have more reason to believe I have to take the over on this one. But since this is just strictly speaking 2017, 2018, I have to take the under. And who's to say that, one of these games against either the Clippers or the Lakers on the road, LeBron James says, hey, you know what? Screw it. I'm sitting one of these games. So not only do you not get the 2, you get like a 1. Yeah, I'm taking the under on this one.
If he leaves the Cavs, and he doesn't even necessarily have to go to the Lakers. He could go to any team in the West. He could go to the Spurs or the Rockets or whoever. He would play more than 2.5 games in the Staples Center. I'm taking the over.
Oh my God!
I'm predicting LeBron James to leave Cleveland. I don't know where, but I think he and Dan Gilbert, I think that marriage is just about run its course. And if Kyrie hits the road as well, I think he will play at least 3 games, if not substantially more, in the Staples Center come 2018.
Oof.
I really do.
I think we could. I think we can both agree LeBron James is gone from Cleveland, right? At the end of the 2018 season, by then he'll be gone. Are we both saying he's gone?
I mean, a lot could change between now and then. That's the thing.
Absolutely fine.
It stands right now. I would be more surprised if he stayed. Barely, but slightly more. I really feel that way.
No, I think I have reason to believe that, you know what, Dan Gilbert pulled on some string that made LeBron say, hey, you know what, this is the last straw. Maybe he's professional about it and says, hey, you know what, I'll play out my last year, leave, or something happens just before the season or during the year or at the trade deadline or what have you. I don't know. But LeBron and Cleveland beyond 2018, that's not going to be a thing. With regards to this season, I think I'm taking the under. I see him sticking it out and then leaving after. But 2018 will be the last we'll see of LeBron in a Cavs jersey.
I think you might be right. What about for this season, Carmelo Anthony over under 0.5 games in a New York Knicks uniform? What do you think?
Boy, that guy, I'm taking the under. If he finds a way to stay as a New York Knick, that boy is just punishing himself. There's no reason why Carmelo Anthony should still be a New York Knick at this point in the year. Like, come on, man. Every second week now, we hear how the Portland Trailblazers are that quiet team that's dealing for Carmelo Anthony. This rumor keeps coming up as if it's some new thing. Pull the trigger already. What is New York doing? This whole bit of trying to convince him to stay with New York is mad intense. I don't know what it is, but geez, take the under. I think Melo's still leaving. It's such a surprise that he's still there.
I don't know if you saw my tweet the other day when the NBA schedule came out, and we should actually talk about that in a second. But November 1st is when the Rockets play in Madison Square Garden, and I said that would be Carmelo Anthony's return to MSG. I'm going under. Even if maybe the Blazers convince him that he could waive his no-trade clause there, I think he wants out of New York, and they're going to run out of options, and it may take as long as the preseason to finally bite the bullet and admit that they have to just get rid of him, but it's going to happen. He doesn't want to be there. And if he's on that team, the longer he's on that team, the longer it'll be before they can finally rebuild. And they're not winning with him regardless. So they need to ship him off. And the sooner they realize that, the better. I'm taking the under here. Absolutely.
Carmelo out of New York. Going over to the gridiron, Ezekiel Elliott, we mentioned him at the top of the show. 6-game suspension. He will obviously appeal it. Over under 5.5 games of Zeke being suspended this year. Jake.
I mean, we talked about it, and I said how the NFL was trying to make an example out of Ezekiel Elliott. That being said, they messed with not only a team that should be contending maybe for a Super Bowl, but definitely for their division.
I think they're clearly the best team in that division.
And to go after a guy like Jerry Jones, who was just enshrined to the Hall of Fame and live. We've mentioned Jerry Jones the past few weeks, and the guy takes a stand against Twinkies and kneeling during the national anthem, but he's furious at the NFL over the 6-game suspension. I think the reason it was 6 in the first place is because they knew he would appeal, and they would move it back down to 4. That's where Brady was last year. I think 4 is a far more likely scenario. I could be wrong. I'd love for them to prove me wrong. But I'm guessing I'm taking the under. Sorry.
Yeah, you're the under.
Games suspended, not games. But, yeah, I'm taking the under.
I think it would surprise me more if that suspension went down to 4. Right or wrong, it would surprise me. I'm taking the over, and I think that suspension gets upheld. I don't know why. I feel like the NFL – with their 6-game suspension, they feel as if they've made a hardline decision, and I for some reason I think once the process is done, I could see it just being upheld, and the Cowboys will have to find a way to not have Ezekiel Elliott for 6 games. I'm actually going to take the over on this one.
It's a respectable opinion. This might be the trickiest one of them all because you never know what you're going to get from the NFL. I would not be surprised either way. How about that? I'll put it that way.
Nope. I wouldn't necessarily be surprised unless they somehow say, you know what, you are clear to go. No more games off for you. Your suspension comes off the books. I mean, I think that would be the ultimate, like, what the hell moment in the NFL, but that's not happening. But I see it going 6. If it goes to 4, I guess that may be fine too, but I don't know. Part of me still feels that maybe the NFL might have needed to give him more. I don't know. It's just really tricky.
Got another NFL one for you, Julian. This is your team, the New York Jets. Quincy Enunwa went on the IR last week. Just more bad news for a team with very low expectations to begin with. I'm setting the bar pretty low here at 1.5 wins. You taking the over or under on this one?
Bro, you know your team is trash when Quincy Enunwa being on the injured reserve is like a big deal. If the New York Jets win 3 games this year, I'm going to throw a big party and everyone's invited because I don't see this team amounting to anything this year. I'm not talking 0-16, but I mean, good Lord. I think, oh, Lord. Oh, jeez. The Jets are such a sad sack team with a bunch of no-name guys up on offense and defense. And they're such a bad team that if they even think about trying and go to try to be like a 6-10 team or like some kind of overachieving team, that would just upset fans more because they should be in a prime position to just rebuild and recoup a bunch of great draft picks. I think I'm going to take the over, but this isn't a situation where I believe the Jets will overachieve. I think 2 or 3 wins will be enough for the New York Jets this year. I think 1 might be, at the same time, not surprising. I think that might be too low.
I'm with you. I think 2 or 3 is probably what will happen. But for the sake of argument, I'm going to go with the under and say, yes, they are that bad. And I would hate to be the team to lose to the New York Jets. So I see that game on my schedule. I am marking that as a W regardless of who I am. Even Cleveland, I think, would be the favorite in that scenario, honestly.
Cleveland and the Jets play each other Sunday, October 8th, at the Dog Pound, by the way. So if the Jets find a way to beat Cleveland, the Cleveland Browns, there will be some extremely sad fans, if they're not already sad already, at the Dog Pound that day. Keeping it in the NFL, Colin Kaepernick.
Well, hold on one sec. I just want to say one thing. That game reminds me of, oh man, back in what year was it? 2006, I believe. The Texans and the 49ers played in what came to be known as the Reggie Bush Bowl. Turns out that the Texans, with the number 1 pick, did not take Reggie Bush.
Yes.
However, I think that game between the Jets and the Browns could be known as the Sam Darnold Bowl. That's all I wanted to say.
That's fair. One small note before we get to the Colin Kaepernick. Hopefully DeShone Kizer pans out okay. He looked all right in preseason. Maybe
not buying it. Even I wasn't really buying him in the.
Not saying he's the second coming. I'm saying he looked okay.
Makes it all that much worse. If Brock is starting the preseason, then you have no future in the NFL if he's beating you out for that job because we've seen what you can get from him and it is not good. And for a team that's not even trying to compete at all this year, if they'd rather start Brock over a rookie, then trust me, Kaiser's not going to be anything in this league. You can quote me on that.
Okay. Colin Kaepernick, still not on an NFL roster. We don't know when that day is going to come. Over the last few days, we've seen Jay Cutler, who looked as if he was going to be in a broadcast booth, get a job over Colin Kaepernick. Obviously, there are arguments pro-con for that. But Colin Kaepernick, 0.5 NFL games this year. Over or under?
I'm going to take the under, Julian. And there's a lot of factors here. And I think the biggest ones are obviously ownership doesn't want to take the risk on a guy like that in their locker room. Whether that's right or wrong, you know my stance on that. I think it's absurd. He's clearly a top 64 quarterback in the world, if not 32, which I think he is. That being said, I think there's another factor at play here, and we've seen the rumors that have surfaced for Kaepernick that were Baltimore when Flacco got hurt, and that was Miami when Tannehill got hurt. They went with Jay Cutler instead, who I think that's going to be a disaster, but that's a different argument for a different day. I think I heard someone say this, and they convinced me. I think Colin Kaepernick probably could be a backup if he wanted to. I think he's not interested in being a backup because right now, as it stands, his brand is far more valuable as a free agent, as a victim with people who won't sign him, than if he were a random backup on some random team to never be heard from again, employed so people no longer care about his cause, yet not on the field every Sunday. I'm not sure if that's his mindset, but it makes sense that his brand is far more valuable with him being this victim who cannot get a job versus some backup on some team who's still getting a paycheck far more than the average American to do nothing.
you say that, well, not necessarily you hear that, and then you think Colin Kaepernick standing up for himself, well, standing up, doing his thing for the kneeling and for sitting for the anthem, speaking out on social justice issues, the Fidel Castro shirt, the NFL pig socks, and then all of a sudden, after all that, yes, fine, he's doing his absolute best to get a job. Well, I'm under the impression he's trying to get himself a job. After all that, you hear this rumor about Colin Kaepernick caring so much about his brand that he's better off as a free agent trying to chase a starting job as opposed to selling for a backup job. I don't know about that. I don't know if that makes sense to a few other people. That doesn't necessarily make as much sense to me. I'm going to take the under because I think that the teams are just not going to give him that chance and are going to, just either leave him as a free agent or even if he does get signed, I don't see him making the field. If anything, what could happen is we see a team sign him like halfway through the year and then we see like a quarterback maybe, struggle a bit and the camera, whether it's CBS or Fox, just keeps panning over to Colin Kaepernick on the sideline, the helmet to his side, and we're thinking, is he going to get in? Is today the day? What's happening? We're just going to be on Kaepernick watch. But I don't see that coming to fruition. I think we're taking the under on this one.
I think you're exactly right. I think some organization is not that opposed to bringing in Kaepernick. They just don't need him right now, but there will be injuries down the line, and I think he will wear an NFL uniform at some point this year due to injury for some team that will be able to use him. But that being said, I think you're exactly right. It'll be as third on the depth chart and not second. Therefore, he will not come into a game unless there are multiple quarterback injuries on one team. I'm with you on that one. I think he will get signed, but not necessarily play. And the camera and the coverage will be as bold as ever. I'm with you on that. For sure. Last over-under I got for you here. I took the over before the show, and I am swimming in cash right now. Julian, 6.5 dumb lower thirds. We have about 9 by my count.
You counted? Wow.
Julian, you got to cool it with the lower thirds, man. And we're going to have to start instituting rules on that one because it's getting ridiculous, buddy.
Come on. These are so fun to do. I take inspiration, as you can see here on my lower third down here. I take inspiration for the great Woody Page who, when he does his thing on Around the Horn, he has that little board behind him and he'll write anything he wants on that. Woody Page, I don't read much of you. You do your thing with the Denver Post, but hey, I enjoy a lot of you on Around the Horn whenever I get the chance to watch. So you're the inspiration for these lower thirds, my man. If you somehow end up coming across this video, hey, thank you. I appreciate you. You are appreciated, Woody Page. Yeah, take the over on this one, my man. Like, obviously, if a cool idea comes to me, I got to write it down. Hey, sometimes, you know what? You'll say something crazy. I got to write it. Hey, I wrote out at least 1 or 2 things that I set out as actual quotes. Russell Westbrook will not win MVP. Had to get that down on the video footage so that way you can use that as reference material. Hey, someone's got to write this stuff down.
Woody Page, one of a kind. Not sure if I would try to do what he does. Also, he only does 1 per episode, or does he change it every commercial? Actually, he might do that.
He at the very least it changes. He doesn't have something constant. He doesn't have something that like stays with him for like a whole week. And fine, maybe, you know what? I'm at a faster pace than Woody. I'll admit that. But still, he is in mind whenever I make these changes.
Julian, we are way past our time limit here. We had some more stuff planned, but we're going to push that till next week. Actually, it works out a lot better because we could have a very special guest or returning guest to the Faceoff, so definitely want to tune in. But for now, I'm Jake Lapin, at JakeLapin_MLB. He's Julian McKenzie, at JKA McKenzie. Did I get that right?
JKA McKenzie, that is the Twitter handle here. I know we are running low on time. But one last quick shout out here. The Athletic, obviously, the big website that's been going around, throughout the United States. Obviously, Chicago's got one. Toronto now in Canada has had one for the last few months. Montreal was getting its own athletic site. Shout out to Arpin Basu, formerly of lnash.com, NHL.com, the new editor-in-chief of that. So just wanted to big up the man Arpin Basu for that.
Guys, thanks for watching these YouTube videos. I think we're going to start editing some of these down so we can have the best of the face-off will return, given I have enough time at my job, essentially. We'll see about that. In the meantime, though, you can watch these live, and they will stay online on my YouTube channel, Jake Lapin. Plus, you can always catch us on Mixcloud and iTunes for the edited version to get that intro music that we know you all love. And guys, it's been another great week, Julian.
Man, another great week. You know, I'm sad we had missed last week, but I'm glad we are back to the swing of things, man.
We are back. Sorry we had to miss last week. Shouldn't happen again, hopefully. Like I said, some good stuff in store for next week. Possible special guests. Guys, thanks for listening. As always, continue to listen to Face Off right here on YouTube, Mixcloud, and iTunes. Have a great week.
Bye, guys.